Hi, I'm Adrian Gardner. I was born in Zambia, was educated in Zimbabwe, but came to University of Cape Town and spent 7 years doing a 3-year degree. So it was one of those great students, but I'll tell you why. I came out of a school which was in the bush that my dad started, called Falcon College, a very famous school today. And my dad was very involved in cattle ranching, and one of the ranches that he looked after for an international company from the UK was 150,000 hectares, and it had its own game reserve on it. So as children, we were brought up not only at school in the wild, but in the bush in the wild with my dad and everything. So I had it in the wild. And the reason that I probably took so long to do my degree was because, you know, I sort of found out that when I got to Cape Town, there was a little bit different to the bush. There was something called wine, woman and song. So I had to change my lifestyle a bit, and then I got my first job, and I realized how stupid I was, that I'd been defeated by an academic thing. So I went back at night while everybody else was enjoying life, and I just said, I'm not going to be beaten. So I got my degree, and fortunately the marketing lecturer there had some inclination that I was capable of doing something, and she said to her husband, who was the general manager of a bus company called Golden Arrow, you know, that you should take this guy because he was looking for an assistant. And I backwards and forwards. Anyway, I got the job, and I realized after 6 months that corporate life wasn't for me. But the great thing was that when I started my career, I started it with Spar, you know, which was the Dutch franchise that was brought to South Africa. The head office was in Cape Town. And the Spar wholesaler in Port Elizabeth was a great guy called Bruce McWilliams, and he offered me a job. So I came to Port Elizabeth in 1969, had been married a year, and you can imagine my wife wasn't that happy. She was brought up in Cape Town, but we came there and we've been there ever since. And then I think my passion for wildlife was obviously from the background, and we were very successful with horse racing. And we started a stud in Plettenberg Bay called Roodefontein. And in those days you were quite lucky because whatever you made in your business, you could offset if you lost in another business. So while building this farm, I could offset profits from the one to the other, and then they put a wall between that. And I actually asked Byron du Plessis, who was our Minister of Finance at the time, to come and open the stud because I was trying to get this thing overturned. But anyway, it didn't happen. And then out of the blue, I got an offer to buy the stud, and I said, not for sale. And that was a Thursday, and I was in Zimbabwe. And they found me there, and I came down, and I said to my partner at the time, don't worry, because I'll just go down and say thank you, no thank you. We sold it on Sunday. So what it tells you, everything has a price. So we sold the land, but I had 300 horses left. But the interesting thing about that was, I don't know if you guys or your listeners will remember Sydney Press, who was Mr. Edgar's. He started Edgar's, and he was very big into horse racing, and he was the first to put horses on the stock exchange. So I managed to sell my horses to that Oakfields, it was called, and I took ordinary shares, preference shares and cash, and I was a board member, and we eventually closed that down. But I had some money, and then I said, I want my piece of Africa. And I went back to Zimbabwe. I went to the traditional areas of South Africa, and I soon realized that if I don't find something close to where I live, it's not going to benefit me or the family. The kids were at school in Grahamstown, at St Andrews, and somebody said to me, I was sitting with him at cricket, go and have a look at this farm near Allisdale. And I went and had a look at it, 1,200 hectares. So bought the farm. The next farm came. The next thing I had 4,000 hectares. And then I decided to read up what was there. And there was a great guy called Skeed who wrote about the wildlife that existed in the Eastern Cape and all over Africa. And I bet you don't know that more species exist in the Eastern Cape than anywhere else in Southern Africa. And that the Kruger Park should have been here, not there. And so what happened was that we started to put back, because when the 1820 settlers came, what did they do? They wiped out the game. The lions were gone 160 years ago. So 160 years later, we brought lion back. And then we brought all the others back because the big five had gone. And Addo called themselves Addo Elephant Park because 11 elephants were left after these 1820 settlers had come and wiped everything out. And that started Addo Elephant Park. now I'm on top of Addo Elephant Park. They've taken and put the big 5 in. They're expanding. They're making it, and they're doing a great job. I've said drop elephant. Addo National Park. Kruger National Park. That's what we need. So then, you know, Shamwari would never have been the success that it is, where it all began with me, if it hadn't been for the endorsements that I got. And one of the major endorsements was from Dr. Ian Player, Gary Player's brother, who I class as the Attenborough of Southern Africa, if not Africa. An incredible human being. I was lucky to meet him at a presentation he did at a motor company in PE, and I said to him, Ian, I need you to come and see what I'm doing. And it took me a while, and he came, and he spent a day with me. Changed my life, and I think to an extent it changed his life. I got onto his board of the Wilderness Foundation. We brought it back to, I got him to change it and bring it to Port Elizabeth, and you won't believe it or not, but the person who helped me the most to bring it there and helped to finance it, because he financed the 2001 World Wilderness Congress, was Enoch Godongwana, our current Minister of Finance, who was in the local government. And we brought the Wilderness Foundation down to South Africa, to the Eastern Cape, to Port Elizabeth, and today it's probably the 3rd biggest non-profit in South Africa. But if without Ian, and I'm a great believer in endorsements, I'm a good plagiarist, and I love endorsements. So what do? When I'm trying to open Shamwari, I go to the famous places up in the Lion Sands, and the Kruger Park, and Sabi Sands, and I go to places like Londolozi and Mala and that, and see how they've done it, and say, look, let's do it that way. And that's where I met John Varty, who was the founder of Londolozi, and he was with us the other night. So, you know, and Ian was incredible, you know, that I was privileged to have an afternoon tea with Sir David Attenborough, who's turning 99, with people like Jack Hanna, with a lot of people that the current generation won't remember, but absolutely amazing people. You know, we had film stars come to us, Brad Pitt, John Travolta, you know, the golfers that came, Tiger Woods, Ernie Elson, Dad and I were in business for 30 years. And so we had great endorsements. And then and without the IDC, who helped fund me, we were the first private tourism company to get funding from the IDC. And it nearly became a nightmare, but they recognized the fact that this could work. And then I think the legacy is that, to have had found somebody like Dr. Dean Allen, who's authored this book and written about it, and took the trouble to go and interview probably 60 or 70 people around the world and to get their views on this. Because this goes into not only the history of my life in wildlife, but you know how it all started, what I did in Port Elizabeth, penguin pools, castle crane hire, all sorts of different page boy doors, spring doors, and all sorts of different things. And you know, I went through my university of life. I lost everything in 1979, had to start again. And I think that the legacy really is, you know, that there are currently 16 equivalents of Shamwari. So people have realized that, you know, besides cattle, sheep and goats, wildlife has got a value. And, you know, we bring tourism. Just to give you the best example is when I put all those farms together, we employed 16 people that were there. Today, with Shamwari, and where I managed to keep our lodge, which is Founders Lodge, which is right adjacent to Shamwari, we employ over 500 people without the multiplier effect of car hire, the booze, the food, the air tickets and everything else. But I think really what the message is I'm trying to get across is that I was very fortunate to be able to keep Founders Lodge, because that's where it all began. And we have a museum there. We tell people, come and stay with us. We have traversing rights over Shamwari. We're right next door to them. We've got things there that other people haven't done, a hide. We've got a railway carriage there. We've got something very special there. And that's what we're trying to get the message over, that the future in, I think, the Eastern Cape is conservation. You know, we've got to become a wildlife destination. And as you mentioned to me beforehand, is the future going forward. The future going forward is really going to be, we're trying to build a corridor with the Wilderness Foundation and everybody else from Plettenberg Bay to Graafrenet. Do you know that that's going to be bigger than the Kruger? And people are full-time employed in trying to get this to happen. We all drop our fences and we get this wildlife really proper in the Eastern Cape. And that's the asset it's going to be. Now, just to conclude is that one of the wisest words that Ian gave me was, make sure you involve the community when you deal with conservation and wildlife. They have to understand the values. And so we started a thing called the Community Conservation Fund Africa, which could be America, could be Australia, could be Antarctic, could be anywhere. And I was going to do that through when we sold half of our brand Mantis to Accor, using their loyalty program by asking people to use their points towards conservation. And so we still haven't given up on that. We managed to bring American Humane to Africa and open Global Humane, and that they're involved, one of the biggest non-profits in America. They're involved now in Africa and looking at not only domestic animals but wildlife as well. So the journey, unfortunately for me, has just begun, so I won't see the end of it. But I hope that the legacy there and what we've done is really going to make a difference, and that people will follow it, and that we will become something really great. You know, and I just said to the Premier of the Eastern Cape a couple of years ago, we're very busy in Rwanda. That was through Dubai World Hibochi Mwari. We wrote the master plan for Akagera, their wildlife park and everything. I said, do yourself a favor, just come with me and meet the president. And say, I know he's had some negativity lately, but do you know there's not one bit of rubbish in that whole country. I said, they've got 12 million people. We've got 8 million people here. We can set an example and become the #1 province of South Africa. All we got to do is follow what other people do and make it happen. Please, let's make it happen. And that's the message. I said, we've started, we're at the beginning, make it happen. And to conclude, there's a great saying that Ian Player taught me. Do you know the word can't? C-A-N-T. His brother was running behind him, Gary, and his brother stopped him and said, I can't run any further. Ian said to him, write the word in the sand, can't, C-A-N-T. And he said, now will you cover up the T and the apostrophe? What have you got? He said, can. He said, carry on running behind me. The title is right there. Then it's the title was done by the author, because after he'd interviewed everybody, he came up with the idea. He said, the man who changed a landscape. So, and I think that's appropriate, but it's not a man, it's a team. This book's about a team effort. Whenever I write in here, I couldn't have happened without the team. So, I think you're going to interview the author, and I think without having got him and the thoroughness that he went into here, because he doesn't just give what a great guy I am, because he's interviewed people who've told him that I've also got another side to me. Don't bugger around with me, because you know I can lose it, but I can forgive quickly and turn the page. But he comes across and he relates that well in the book. You know, it's because I want to relate it to the Eastern Cape. You know, why do people go to Cape Town? Because they've got product. They've got Table Mountain. They've got the wine. They've got Mandela's, the jail. They've got product. We have to create product. So the message I'm trying to get, and I'm nearly there. It's taken me 10 years. Do you know that the biggest collection of Mandela's items from his past are in Umtata? I've said, please can I borrow them for 6 months and bring them to Quebec or Mandela Bay? Because you know when they brought the Tutankhamun to London, you couldn't get in for 6 months. So if we brought that to Quebec and people would, for 6 months in season, they would far easier come there and see that and do that than rather than to go and travel. Nobody's going to go to Umtata. That's the sadness. So the message to the future is create product for this province to make the tourism come here. And just look at what the weather is like today, what it's been like for the last 2 months. Why aren't we haven't got more people here? And we've got to fix our city, the broken cities that we've got here. And it's so easy to do. Just get the team behind you, because it's a team effort. Stop worrying about sitting and arguing in Parliament and wherever else. Get out there and do the work.